Thank you. We'll call this board meeting to order on 1/22/24. And first up, we need to approve our agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I
I'll
move
move
that
it.
we approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, I heard David and then Arnie.
Yep.
Any conversation or additions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We are up to Superintendent Search Committee, and I will hand it off to whoever's the spokesperson for that committee.
I don't think they picked one.
It'd be either Kevin or I probably.
That's true.
Kevin, would you like me to go or do you want to?
If you want to, go for it. Yep, it sounds good.
All right. Yeah, Kevin and I met with our interim superintendent and some of the other staff to review the applications, and we wanted to present those to the full board and for any potential next steps. We reviewed total of 6. We got 6 proposals that came in during the period. OSBA, Northwest Leadership Associates, Breakthrough Consulting, McPherson and Jacobson, Human Capital Enterprises, and Coaching to the Next Level were the ones that came in that we scored. And we scored them basically on cost, experience, company focus, and sort of Oregon connections and contacts. And I mean, I think there are several good options for the board. I think we felt comfortable with at least the top 3, if not more. And I mean, I think they were all reasonable proposals. I'll go through briefly some of our thinking and some of the comments that came up during our discussions, if I can recall them. If I miss anything, please fill in, you all that were attendance. I'll start off with OSBA. They were the highest scoring. We've used them before. That was our last search, and I think they got us a little bit of heads up because of our previous experience. At least I think Kevin and I's viewpoint of that. But obviously, you as board members can share your own experience about what that was like last time. Obviously, it's a different individual. Steve Kelly is gone. So it's Vince Adams, I think, who's been there for a while as well, would be our main person. Obviously, OSBA is sort of a known quantity. The process is known. So if we're happy with what they did with us last time, this would be sort of a repeat of probably what we went through before. It would be known to us. So I think it's a reasonable, and it did score, I think, overall the highest. Although as you can see, the top scores were all fairly high. They did present some current work they're doing and some recent searches as well. I think if I remember, they did Abandon as well, Central Curry, Harney County, Alsea. They obviously did the South Coast ESD as well. And I think like I said, we're all probably fairly familiar with that process. So we thought that was a good choice for us. Another, I think, very reasonable option would be Northwest Northwest Leadership Associates. Let me find my notes here, y'all. I had this better organized about a half hour ago. So Northwest Leadership Associates, they're also a regional firm. They're more based in Washington. More of their work is in Washington than Oregon, but they do work in both, and they do quite a few searches. Probably about an average of 15 searches per year for school districts and leadership roles. Some superintendent, other assistant or deputy superintendents, those kinds of roles. So again, they've done about 15 or so per year, 75 in the last year. Gladstone, Ellensburg, Granite Falls, Ridgefield were some of the ones that they quoted that were more recent. I would say that overall, a lot of the organizations followed a very similar process of what they would recommend, but most of them also said, obviously the board is in charge of the process and they would customize what they do based on board preference as well. So just as a general thing, most of these entities followed a fairly similar process. I would say that the one difference, for instance, was that Northwest Leadership does most of the screenings themselves. They publish a report and then they go through it as a board, and so they're one of the organizations that do a lot of the legwork around the screening process themselves, and sort of out pops the more finished product for us as the board. I think that's a little bit different if you guys remember what we did with OSBA, which we were much more hands-on in that process. So that might be a thing that the board would want to consider is did they like that process before, or would they like sort of a more potentially closed process where the board has a little bit more, hands off during that initial screening process. But again, I do think these entities would probably adjust based on what the board thinking was around that. So again, the lead was a Dr. Cementi, also very experienced. They're searching, a lot of the searches across all these entities were fairly similar. Some of them really emphasize more of so that they have some national search process, but almost all of them talked about having most of the success will come from a regional search, and that was true for Northwest Leadership as well. So again, I think this would be a reasonable option. They did offer sort of a 2-year guarantee. There were a couple of firms that offered a guarantee. Again, I'm not sure how much help that would be or would not be. I mean, we had a guarantee, but it's 2 years, so I don't know if that really makes much of a difference to the board. And the costs too. This cost was $18,400, and you could kind of see that most of the costs were sort of in the same ballpark. So this might have been a little bit on the higher end, but it was still sort of within that sort of the main of how the other ones were as well. So that's Northwest Leadership Associates. Another, I think, reasonable option would be Breakthrough Consulting. Let's see. This was, I think, maybe this is the firm that North Bend School District used, and there was some discussion from us on the board about whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. I won't say here publicly whether it was good or bad, but we have a local, our sister city had this group, and this is what they use. So we have an ability to kind of hear clearly from the partners whether that was an experience they would do or not. So I do think we heard some staff feedback that maybe more pressure was put on the staff to do the work themselves, and that is some consideration is how much workload is going to be put on existing staff members. David in particular probably would have some brunt of some of that, but other staff also might be involved in that process. But you all could check that out yourself if you wanted to with your connections over North Bend. But that was the firm that they used. They also did, I think they also worked with Crestwell, Harrisburg, and Evergreen Virtual as well. And they included some documentation about Crook County, which is, I think they're doing a current search in Crook County. I would say that in terms of the proposal, it probably wasn't as comprehensive as some of the others. It was a little sparse in terms of what we got. There wasn't as much there. So that might be, I mean, if I was doing a point that always marks me down, it marks somebody down if they don't have a complete proposal or they're missing some key elements. And then I'll give you a mention of some of the other ones, McPherson and Jacobson. Obviously, I mean, this is probably the most professional type proposal. I mean, they do a lot of this work. They are not local. They're based out of, I think, Omaha, Nebraska. But they do have consultants in different areas. And there's an Oregon consultant that's in the Dalles. And, again, if we were looking for somebody with more of a national imprint, I'm not sure if that will help us in our search. Almost all of them said probably that doesn't help a lot. You're looking for folks that are more maybe regional and maybe more connected. But they probably do have that. Obviously, they have a lot of experience doing this work. They do a lot of searches. I think they've done 1,000 searches since 1991. And they too are one that do the screening and pre-interviews and sort of present, their findings to us rather than us being involved in that process as well. And then just briefly, Human Capital Enterprises. They're also, I think they've been also very active in doing some searches. Let's see, they did look like Willamette, ESD, Tillamook, Bellevue, Washington last year. And I think they've got pretty good reputation. Their cost, though, it was quite a bit higher. It was about $27,900, and then there were some additional costs for other things if we wanted some add-ons. So I think they got marked down in our group because of that cost. And then finally, the coaching to the next level. This was probably the most sparse proposal in some ways. It was missing. There were really no references or examples of other organizations, and there were no CVs or resumes from the people that were going to be doing the work. So that got marked down as because of those. So that was the result of our review. Any additional comments, either Kevin or Brian?
No, I think you did a great job, David. Appreciate it a ton. I'm calling from inside of a soccer van, so I'm a little out of the process right now, but I am here. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
I think you did a good job, David. I guess my preference would be, since we're really trying to find a good fit for Coos Bay, and I'm out interviewing staff like crazy, trying to, to help inform that. I'm not real big on the idea that somebody else does all the screening. I mean, I would like us to be involved with that. I mean, we're talking about the firm now, and then as far as, how we actually conduct the search, I guess that's phase 2. But I think that we really need to. I think we need to be involved. That's the bottom line. We need to be involved. I don't like the idea of, we'll give you the top 3. Doesn't feel good.
I just want to say real quick, Brian, thank you so much for your input. I would love to hear from the board members, just maybe first, and then just so we can have some, I want them to feel like they can answer on their own. I know they always do. I trust that they always do. They've all got opinions, but I'd love to hear from them first, and then we'll go to you and get your input as well.
I only spoke because I was asked. That's all. Sorry.
Oh, were you asked specifically? I'm so sorry. I didn't know that.
Can I went through the proposals sort of briefly, scanned them. The one thing I really liked about the School Boards Association was right up front, they dealt with the issue of diversity and how they understood that, there are a lot of areas of diversity that could be looked at within this area, and that they'd be conscious with that. The other thing was they put on a search, and they said, I mean, if you want to talk national, they're going to put it out through the School Boards Association network. So every school board association in every state's going to see it. And when I was back in New Hampshire, we got responses from across the country through the School Boards Association. But the second firm also was very specific in that, basically saying, we've done this. We have about 15 people that we already think that we could refer to you. And that scared me, because they really don't know us that well to be telling me they already know who's going to fill the job. So I like the School Boards Association.
I would say, just Addie, my review too was that a lot of the searching was probably fairly similar across all the organizations. I mean, they all were going to be doing most of the same things, But I think
Yeah.
what you're saying also though is kind of true, which is what Brian was saying is, I think there is a sort of a one-to-one recruiting. I mean, when we looked at interim superintendents too, right? They already had some options for us, and I think to have a balance of both sometimes is helpful as well.
We've had some good experiences with the people who are on the list for OSBA. I mean, for them. So I think that's a positive too, because he did a nice job with our board recently.
Kevin or Adrian, do you have anything?
My only concern with OSBA, we did our last superintendent search with them. I thought that was a bit, sort of a bit scripted, and maybe that was the person who was running the search for us, who's now retired. Other than that, they've got the sort of the best availability of contacts in our state and the region. Northwest Leadership Associates seemed, okay if we want to use that. As far as the rest, Breakthrough Consulting, I think, is just kind of sitting in that top 3 because of their price. I did think it was really interesting that in their letter of interest, they were kind of pushing the North Bend superintendent on us, take that for what it's worth. And we do have some experience with Vince Adams from OSBA. I remember being in a couple meetings with him, so you kind of know what you're getting with that as well. So I did hear from I think it was our union rep who said they would like to have had a bigger part in the superintendent search last time. If I remember correctly, the first part of the search was relatively confidential because obviously there's a lot of candidates who don't want their employers knowing that they're looking for a job. And it was fairly, if I remember the process correctly, it was fairly easy to weed that out I believe we had 3 candidates who were kind of viable on paper, and one of them sort of bowed out at the last minute. So that, that's kind of your luck of the draw, but I do want to make sure that we do our best to include our staff and our union representatives as much as possible, and as long as the search firms allow for that, I would definitely take that into consideration.
Thank you, Adrian. And David, you did say that it sounded like, and you 3 were on the committee, that they were pretty flexible and that any of the search firms would basically individualize it to our community, so that if we wanted it more open or, confidential, or if, we said, like Brian had mentioned earlier, that we want more say in the process, even in the beginning, that we would be able to do that with any of the firms. I do agree that, we've used OSBA. They've worked hard for us in the past. I have a little bit of the trepidation that Adrian mentioned, just because, we've been there, and hopefully we can. It sounds like they all have their formulated process, but hopefully they can, have some flexibility in that, and we're not so wedded to, that process. I felt like last time we was just kind of going down the checklist a little bit. Okay, now we need 2 community members. We need this, we need that. And then
That's going to happen with any of them.
that sounds like what David was saying too. But I'm hopeful that they can be a little bit flexible if we wanted to individualize it, like you said.
Yeah, Kim, I think, having most of us been through this recently, I think we know what we probably would like to do differently. And I think we could insist on that. That may be something to make sure and confirm before we sign anything with anybody, to make sure that they are in understanding. But, most times when you're hiring an organization to do your search, you are the ones in control. You pay the bill. And so, I think you're right. We could clarify that with whoever decide that that's in fact their understanding as well.
Thank you, David. Kevin, you've been quiet. I know you're probably coaching and simultaneously in this board.
No. I agree with everyone here. I think our one or two choices will do a great job, and I feel comfortable moving forward with whichever one you guys kind of want to go with.
I would point out too, if you did look at all the proposals, all the time frames pretty much that were listed are very aggressive. And that's obviously because of where we are. But they all read sort of similarly in their aggressiveness. But it does put it on a very short time frame.
Yep.
We're already late for a few of those.
Yeah.
Arnie, what were you going to say?
No, I just said I agree. They were, and we need to be.
I wanted to go back to Brian too, because Brian, I didn't want to cut you off from what you had to say, and what we value your opinion as well. So.
No, I think I've said what I need to say. I mean, I just don't think you should turn it over the responsibility to, it's the board's responsible for hiring the superintendent. It's the most important job that you've got. For you not to be involved with the process, it just seems silly to me. And I think that we should have some input along the way. I always worry about search firms being too scripted, but I really think a lot of we need to get out and network too, and I'm going to a COSA conference later this week, to sell Coos Bay, to let sitting superintendents know that there's a real good job down here on the South Coast. And, what your first impression may be is not what I'm seeing on the ground. And so I think that us getting out there, and, I know Arnie knows a ton of people out there as well. And all of you folks have been around the community a long time. It's our job to really get out and sell Coos Bay. And we're going to do that better than any search firm. So all three of the top ones all have the mechanics, as long as they're not so rigid that they won't let us help them mold that to our needs. I'm good with any of them.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for selling Coos Bay too. Our top things, we need somebody that likes the outdoors, doesn't mind the rain. We've got the dunes, we got the ocean, we got rivers, lots of hiking.
And lots of rain.
Yep. Just make sure they know all that before they get here. If you like,
But
outdoors,
we don't have ice storms.
yes, and not a lot of snow. So mild all the way around. Just
Yep.
give them all our positives, and great people.
That's true.
I miss the snow. I want this all to be snow coming down.
Oh no.
You can go up in the mountains and find snow.
Yes,
Take
an
an ice-
hour and a half away, it's snowing. All right.
So, do you want to take action on this tonight so that we can get going?
I move we move forward and hire the Oregon School Boards Association to help us lead our superintendent search.
Thank you, Addie. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kevin. Any discussion?
Yeah, this is David. I might advise that what we do is that I don't know how to do this, but if we can maybe empower the chair to have
negotiate a contract
with an OSBA and with our attorney to look at what a contract would look like and what it would entail. Something that because obviously there's some work that has to be done before we enter into a contract. So I think we should reflect that in our motion.
I take that friendly amendment.
You got that, David?
He'll massage it.
Yes, he's got it recorded. So all right, we have an amendment on the floor.
And did Kevin agree? Kevin agree with that friendly amendment?
Yes, sounds great. Good idea.
Thank
Okay.
you, Arnie. Any other discussion? All right, let's go for a vote. Artie,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Adrian,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Addie,
I
and I vote aye as well. Diane is not in the meeting, correct?
Right.
I didn't think, I was just making sure she wasn't under a different name. All right, motion carries. And I think that is all we have for tonight. So very quick, very easy, and it was lovely seeing all of you, and we'll see you next time. Meeting adjourned.
visitor.
Kim?
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just questions on next steps. Who's heading that up? Do you want me to start working on the contract? Do you want David to do
We have
that?
to
Do you
do
want...
something now.
Actually,
Yeah.
actually,
sounds
the motion said Kim was going to do that,
Yeah, it's going to be me
Okay, Kim.
working with our attorney to
and with Brian. Yep.
and with the OSBA. So
Yeah.
what I will do is I will send an email probably to both of you, our attorney and you, to kind of look at next steps in moving forward.
Okay,
So perfect.
fine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.